call the 3 p.m. session of the May 28, 2024 meeting of the Henry County Board of Supervisors to order. I'd like to welcome all of our visitors. Remind you, if you want to be placed specifically on the agenda to address the board, you will need to contact the county administrator's office at least 7 days in advance of any of our regular meetings. However, the public may address the board otherwise under the agenda item number 18 for today's agenda, 19 under today's agenda, matters presented by the public that we'll take up in our 6 p.m. session. Again, welcome everyone. Thank you for coming out and participating in your county government. Our first item of consideration today is the items of consent. What is the pleasure of the board?
Mr. Chairman, if there are no additions or corrections, I move that the items of consent be approved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor? It is 6-0, Jennifer. Agenda item number 6, matters presented by the public. We did have someone contact the county administrator's office in advance. And prior to coming, I need to read a brief policy statement, as we do for all of our matters presented by the public and our public hearings. This is a time for public comment. We welcome your participation in today's meeting. We're here to listen to you. If you care to address the board, come to the podium, state your name, your subject matter, and the district in which you live. By coming to the podium, you've agreed that you will exhibit respect for the board, the staff, and its members. You will receive the same consideration from the board. Please try to keep your presentation to no more than 5 minutes. We have Mr. Ben Gravely that had contacted the county administrator's office.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. I think all of you know who I am. However, I do represent the Irishwood District, and my remarks this afternoon are twofold. I'm wearing two hats. I'm speaking as a concerned citizen of Henry County and a member of our school board. I was asked, what I want to talk about, and my response was a plethora of things. However, to keep my comments within the guidelines, I decided to strip my remarks out, making sure that I do address two concerns that has been bothering me. One of my favorite quotes is from Dr. King, and quote, "There comes a time when silence is betrayal." At our initial meeting of the county's budget presentation and thereafter, several comments were made that I found to be quite disturbing and somewhat concerning. The teacher in me. A strategy I would use as a teacher to get my students to really focus on the end results would be to ask a question at the beginning of the lesson, sometimes at the beginning of my class. My question to you is, help me understand, why is it such a challenge to provide funding for our youth in our community? From a personal standpoint, I'm addressing you this evening because of the education I received from Henry County Public Schools and thereafter. It is constantly being said by county leaders and county leaders.
How you doing? This is Philip.
Straight.
Please continue. I think something came in on our
leaders
system.
And community leaders in our community about further strengthening our workforce by educating ourselves. In addition, it's also being said that businesses are reluctant to locate here unless we have a strong educational system. In the budget presentation, Education was identified as a center pillar of building our community budget, and finally, on our county logo, there it is, education. As I stated, I'm wearing two hats this afternoon. My first concern as a citizen is the comment that was made that the state should provide funding for education and should not rest with local government. I may be presumptuous here. However, based upon that comment, if it were not for state laws requiring localities to provide funding, then the school system wouldn't exist. I hope I heard it wrong. If we don't take care of our children, then who will? We are constantly saying the children are our future. Help me understand why it is such a challenge to provide funding for our children. My last comment is in reference to our request for lump sum funding. Yeah, I'm wearing the school board hat now. I, again, was somewhat offended by the comment when it was stated several times the issue was transparency. Do you realize the implication that we're making? We are elected officials just like you are. And the message that I perceive from that and from your communities is like we can't manage our budget, or we're doing something wrong. We need oversight. And that bothers me. The question was asked, what are the pros and cons of our requests? And what causes heartburn? No response. If you don't know, then maybe a starter question would be the strategy to look in the future. Comments were made about us working together and our working relationship, and I have no problem with that. I don't see that as an issue. However, I do ask that you trust us. Trust us. I've had several people come up to me and ask me, what's going on? Keep in mind, one's perception is one's reality. I close by asking, and I'm sure that, there may have been some miscommunications along the way, but, and I'm speaking on behalf of myself. As I told you, I'm wearing two hats, but I'm speaking solely from the standpoint of school board now, as a member of the school board and a member of this community. Just trust us. Just trust us. Thank you for listening.
Agenda item number 7, the consideration of a resolution honoring Mike Arnold. Mr. Wagner.
Mike Arnold from our Building and Grounds Department is set to retire on June 1st, 2024, following a career of nearly 36 years within the county. Mr. Arnold was hired on September 6, 1988 as a custodian at the old courthouse in Martinsville. And then he was at the new courthouse on Kings Mountain Road, and most recently he has worked here in the administration room since 2017. Mr. Arnold has honorably served Henry County over his entire career, and he will be missed by many of us. We have prepared a resolution for your consideration recognizing his service to the citizens of Henry.
Mr. Bryan, I believe you have a resolution for the board's consideration.
Yes, sir, I do, sir. It's a resolution recognizing the retirement of Mike Amos. It says, whereas the Henry County Board of Supervisors believe that quality local government services are the basic building block that all citizens expect and deserve, and whereas those citizens who devote themselves to public service makes a greater impact on the communities than they ever could know, and whereas many of these employees serve behind the scenes, working diligently to ensure that all facilities are clean and presentable to the public. And whereas one such employee, Mike Amos, has served the building and ground, Arnold, make a correction. I got Mike Amos in my mind. I just whereas one such employee, Mike Arnold, has served in the Building and Grounds Department for 35 years before he retired on June the 1st. Retirement on June 1st, 2024. And whereas Mr. Arnold originally began his career at the Henry County Courthouse on September the 6th of 1988 and transferred to Henry County Administration Building in March 2017. And whereas throughout his career with Henry County, Mike Arnold has contributed to the health, safety, comfort, and overall well-being of his fellow employees and the general public. Now, there be resolved on this, the 28th day of May 2024, that Henry County Board of Supervisors congratulates Mike Arnold on his retirement and thank him for his 35 years of diligent service to Henry County. Signed, Jim Adams, Chairman, Henry County Board of Supervisors. Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we approve this resolution.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor? It is 6-0, Jennifer. Mr. Bryan, if you and Mr. Pruitt would present this on behalf of the board to Mr. Arnold today, appreciate it.
So we're not going to hear a speech now? Is that what you're trying to say? After 35 years, there's nothing to say?
Agenda item number 8, the consideration of a resolution recognizing the 65th anniversary of the Martinsville Henry County Chamber of Commerce. Ms. Buchanan, I believe that you have a resolution for the board's consideration.
I do, Mr. Chairman. This is a resolution recognizing the 65th anniversary of the Martinsville Henry County Chamber of Commerce. Whereas the Martinsville Henry County Chamber of Commerce was founded in 1959 to serve as the hub of support for existing businesses and to attract new enterprise and spur development. And whereas since its founding, the Martinsville Henry County Chamber of Commerce has been a part of the rich fabric of the local business community, essential to elevating our region's promising future. And whereas the Martinsville Henry County Chamber of Commerce now provides services to 786 businesses, enterprises, civic organizations, educational institutions, and individuals. And whereas the organization has demonstrated a level of excellence as evidenced by its prestigious 5-star accreditation from the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, an honor only bestowed to 2% of chambers nationwide. And whereas the Martinsville Henry County Chamber of Commerce consistently works to support local initiatives by providing modern programs to support tourism, education, talent initiatives, infrastructure development, and government advocacy. And whereas this month, the Martinsville Henry County Chamber of Commerce proudly celebrates 65 years of uplifting the regional economy and the quality of life in the Martinsville and Henry County community. Now therefore be it resolved on this 28th day of May 2024 that the Henry County Board of Supervisors congratulates the Martinsville Henry County Chamber of Commerce on its longevity and success, and we thank the past and present members for their many contributions to our community. Signed, Jim Adams, Chairman, Henry County Board of Supervisors. Mr. Chairman, I move that we adopt this resolution.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor? It is 6-0. Jennifer? Ms. Buchanan, if you and Mr. Dillard would be so kind as to present this on behalf of the board. We have with us from the chamber Christoph Liebens and Larissa Rass, and our chamber president, Brunel Thomas. Welcome.
Mr. Chair, members of Board of Supervisors, I simply say thank you. Surprised you didn't.
Brunel, I didn't know he put you on a time limit. Agenda item number 9, a consideration of a proclamation recognizing May 2024 as National Foster Care Month in Henry County. Dr. Cobbler, I believe you have a proclamation to read on behalf of the board.
Resolution recognizing National Foster Care Month. Whereas National Foster Care Month was established more than 30 years ago to bring foster care issues to the forefront, highlight the importance of permanency for every child, and recognize the essential role that foster parents, social workers, and advocates have in the lives of children in the foster care system. And whereas all children deserve a safe, loving, and permanent house, and whereas the primary goal of the foster care system is to ensure the safety and well-being of children while working to provide a safe, loving, and permanent home for each child. And whereas an increased emphasis on prevention and reunification services is necessary to reduce the number of children that enter or re-enter the foster care system. And whereas foster parents are the frontline caregivers for children who cannot safely remain with their biological parents, and foster parents provide physical care, emotional support, and education advocacy, and are the largest single source of families providing permanent homes for children leaving foster care to adoption. And whereas the month of May provides an opportunity to acknowledge the accomplishments of the child welfare workforce, foster parents, advocacy community, and mentors for their dedication, accomplishments, and positive impact they have on the lives of children. Now therefore be it resolved on this 28th day of May 2024 that the Henry County Board of Supervisors recognizes the month of May as National Foster Care Month in Henry County. And we thank our foster families and the staff at the Henry Martinsville Department of Social Services for their dedication to this important cause. Jim Adams, Chairman, Henry County Board of Supervisors. And Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to approve the resolution recognizing May 2024 as National Foster Care Month in Henry County.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor? It is 6-0, Jennifer. I'm going to ask Dr. Cobbler, and if our county attorney, Mr. Lyle, will present us on behalf of the board. Mr. Lyle works closely with the Department of Social Services in this regard, and I would appreciate you all presenting that on behalf of the board.
Mr. Chairman, we have with us members of the Henry Martinsville Health Department of Social Services, as well as foster parents.
Please, those representing come forward so that we can make the presentation.
And Mr. Lyle is also a foster parent.
Yes.
board. This is a hard job, but well worth it. Anybody wants to become a foster parent, get in touch with these ladies. Please, we need you.
Thank you. And I think that this is a need, not only in our community, but seeing the need all over, and it has probably risen to a level over the last number of years for a number of different reasons. Some could blame it on the pandemic, some could blame it on just a number of different things. Probably the need for placement of children has grown nearly to the level of what it grew in a short period of time during the Depression, to where children were placed all over the country in all types of circumstances. We applaud your efforts. We want to help get the word out, so let us know what we can do to do that. I think from time to time I have seen a social media post on the county website in regards to this. Let us know if we can do anything further, and I appreciate you all being here today. That takes us to agenda item number 10, a monthly report on delinquent tax collection efforts. We have with us County Treasurer Scott Grindstaff. Scott was trying to get Mike to come up with him, but Mike wasn't having anything of it. So.
Okay, this is a report for the month of May. Personal property, as of April 30th, we have collected 88.45% of the 23 personal property taxes. During the month of April, we collected $415,651. Real estate collections, April 30th, we collected 93.3% of the 23 real estate taxes. We collected $1,390,000 during the month of April. Since January of 2024, TACS has collected $367,886, and we received another debt set-off payment on May 15th of $77,000. That brings the total for this year to $290,000. And so far in the month of May, we've had 18 DMV stops.
Does anyone have anything for Mr. Grindstaff at this time? All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Agenda item number 11, consideration of a resolution establishing Quest Transport LLC as a designated emergency response agency. Mr. Wagner.
Brandon Quisenberry, President of Quest Transport LLC, is seeking the Board of Supervisors' approval of the attached resolution establishing the company as an EMS agency in Taney County. The Code of Virginia grants the local governing body the authority to approve, by resolution, the creation of any new EMS agencies formed in the county. Local government approval is required before the organization can apply for an emergency medical services license from the Virginia Department of Health. Mr. Quisenberry indicates that he intends to provide interfacility transport services for Sober Health of Martinsville and other medical facilities. His service will not be dispatched by our 911 center or be eligible to respond to emergency calls. And Public Safety Director Matt Tatum is here should you have any questions about the process, and Mr. Quisenberry is here should you have any questions about his request.
All right, the board's had an opportunity in its working papers to review the resolution that is required, also with the background material provided by Mr. Quisenberry, stating the where he is step by step in the licensing process, the insurance process, the just everything to do with this up to date. What is the desire of the board in regard to this proposed resolution?
Well, Mr. Chairman, I'd make a motion that we approve the request for Quest Transport LLC as Design Emergency Response Agency in Henry County, contingent upon applications meeting all zoning requirements and obtaining a business license in Henry County.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? I have one question. Is it stated as to the billing process? Will that primarily be solely through insurance, or will that be direct billing to the individual?
It's my understanding that his company will be, profit-driven business that will bill in whichever means he can to collect, but I would defer to him if you want to ask him that, correct? Questions that you want to ask? Would you like to approach? Yeah.
Please.
Thank you for having me today and voting on this. I heard your question, and the answer is yes, we are going to bill directly to the insurance companies first and then work with patients after that as our primary billing model.
As most of us deal with insurance, either on a care basis or dental or health care or whatever, in some instances, the billing process versus the actual payout by the insurance is different.
Correct.
Suppose that an individual says, we can't come up with that. What is your perceived next step?
Right, so we've had discussions about this, and we don't have any desire to do any hard billing. That's what we're talking about in our industry.
Yes.
Soft billing versus hard billing, we don't have any desire to do judgments or billing like that. I've done paramedicine for 16 plus years, and this is a service that's greatly needed. And there's enough money on the table with revenue recovery from direct insurance billing that isn't necessary. So we don't have any desire to do that because we know how bad this is needed. And
Well, I
so
hope-
we want to just work with them. So we've talked about just doing payment plans or whatever they can do. Because at the end of the day, we have to make money to pay the insurance
Sure.
and the rent, but we don't have any desire to do any kind of liens or anything like that.
Well, I hope you understand the level of my questioning is not to point anything directly. It's more to get an understanding, as we are charged with protecting the rights of the citizens we represent.
Yes. And two, several of the insurance companies that we have to partner with, we're the broker, and so they have lots of guidelines, and several of the community-funded insurance plans will not allow you to do that type of part billing. So we're looking at working with partner with all the insurances, and several of them, that's not on the table if you want to be able to provide services to those clients with that policy. So I know there's 3 at the top of my head that don't allow that. So, and that's why it's just easier just to make that, soft billing policy.
Yeah. Yes, sir.
Yep.
Thank you for answering my questions,
Yep,
Mr.
absolutely.
Quisenberry. I understand from a number of people in the community that this is a needed service.
It is
Thank
very
you.
much so. Thank you so much.
We have a motion and a second. Any other questions or discussion? All in favor? It is 6-0, Jennifer. That takes us to agenda item number 12. We have numerous financial items to cover under agenda item 12. 12A, an award of contract referencing an ambulance re-chassis for public safety. Mr. Wagner.
Public Safety Director Matt Tatum is asking the board to award a contract in the amount of $199,969 to Best Sales and Service of Czech, Virginia for the re-chassis of an existing 2019 ambulance to a 2025 Ford four-wheel drive chassis. In addition, Mr. Tatum is asking the board to approve Best Sales and Services as the sole source vendor for this work based on the existing lifetime warranty on the modular box part of the ambulance. And there's considerable additional information outlined in Mr. Tatum's memorandum attached, and funding for this item is included in the fiscal year 2024 budget. And Mr. Tatum is here today.
With that, in regard to awarding of this contract, what is the action the board desires to take?
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to award a contract of $199,969 with Vest Sales and Service Incorporated for an ambulance re-chassis as presented.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor? Is 6-0, Jennifer. 12B, an award of contract referencing elevator cab and shaft updates for the Building and Grounds Department. Mr. Wagner.
Staff is asking the board to approve a contract in the amount of $78,402 to TK Elevator located in Roanoke, Virginia, to update the elevator cabs and shafts in the administration. Funds for this project are included in the capital improvements plan budget, and the purchasing department has authorized the use of a source level contract for this project and price.
In regard to this contract, what is the action the board desires to take?
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to award a contract for $78,402 to TK Elevator to update the elevator cabs and shafts in the administration building.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor? Is 6-0, Jennifer. 12C, an award of contract referencing a replacement refuse truck for the refuse department. Mr. Wagner.
Staff is asking the board to award a contract in the amount of $389,513 to Excel Truck Group of Roanoke, Virginia, for the purchase of a 2025 Mack LR front-loading garbage truck. This refuse truck will replace an existing truck experiencing repeated equipment failures. Pricing is based on the Virginia Sheriff's Association state contract, and funding for this purchase was included in the capital discretionary fund. And on a related note to this, the last refuse truck we ordered took 2 years to be delivered. So we have to stay out in front of this. Right now, we have an estimate of a 12-month delivery time to get this garbage truck.
All right, in regard to the awarding of this contract, what's the pleasure of the board?
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to approve the contract for $389,513 to Excel Truck Group for the purchase of a 2025 Mack LR front-loading garbage truck.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor? Is 6-0, Jennifer. 12D, an award of contract referencing building demolition for the Building and Grounds Department. Mr. Wagner.
Staff is asking the board to award a contract in the amount of $349,000 to D.H. Griffin of Greensboro, North Carolina, for the demolition of the previous jail building located next door. Following a competitive bid process, D.H. Griffin was selected to conduct the demolition and return the lot to a grassed area. And funding for this project is included in the capital improvements fund.
What action would the board like to take in awarding of this contract?
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to approve the contract of $349,000 to D.H. Griffin for the demolition of the previous jail building.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor? Is 6-0, Jennifer. 12E, an award of contract referencing office supplies for the purchasing department. Mr. Wagner.
Chief Purchasing Agent Carol Jones is asking the board to award a contract to Bassett Office Supply Incorporated to supply and deliver office supplies to county offices, including the schools. The contract is for 1 year with an option to renew for up to 7 one-year periods. Pricing and vendor performance will be reviewed annually before any contract extension is exercised. While the contract does not include a set amount of expenditures because purchases will be based on various orders throughout the year, it is prudent for the board to approve this contract because the collective size of the total amount of office supplies being ordered. Following the review of the request for proposals by a 3-member committee, Bassett Office Supply was selected for this contract.
Okay. What is the pleasure of the board in awarding of this contract?
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to approve the contract to Bassett Office Supply Incorporated for office supplies.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor? Is 6-0, Jennifer. 12F, an award of contract referencing comprehensive plan services for the Planning, Zoning, and Inspections Department. Mr. Wagner.
Staff is asking the board to approve the contract in the amount of $212,139 to Berkeley Group LLC of Bridgewater, Virginia, to provide comprehensive planning services over the next 2 years for a complete rewrite for the Henry County Comprehensive Plan. 5 proposals were received for the project, and following a thorough review by county interview committee, the Berkeley Group was selected for the contract. Funding for this project is included in the fiscal year 2024 budget. And if you did not know, our current comprehensive plan was last updated in 1995, so it's a little bit out of date. So hopefully, this work over the next 2 years will create a good comprehensive plan for us to guide our actions over the next 20 years as well. You will be hearing a lot more about this as we go forward. If the contract is awarded, there's going to be many public meetings and many opportunities for you all and citizens for that, to that comprehensive plan.
In regard to awarding of the contract for comprehensive plan services, what is the desire of the board?
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to award a contract for $212,139 to Berkeley Group LLC for comprehensive planning services as presented.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor? It is 6-0, Jennifer. 12G, an additional appropriation referencing Community Impact Planning Grant for the Planning, Zoning, and Inspections Department. Mr. Wagner.
Staff is asking the board to approve an additional appropriation of $20,000 in grant funds received from the Virginia Department of Housing and Community Development. The funds will be used to hire a licensed surveyor to reconfigure 31 existing lots into 16 building lots for the Villa Heights housing project. This is only one small component of the Villa Heights project, and it's staff's plan to come back to you in June to provide an in-depth presentation of the project and what we're planning to do.
All right, thank you. Even though this is a countywide project, Mr. Bryan, I believe that this project will be in your district.
Yes, sir.
If you so desire to make a motion.
Yes, sir. Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to approve the additional appropriations of $20,000 received from the Department of Housing and Community Development grant.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor? It is 6-0, Jennifer. 12H, an additional appropriation referencing U.S. Department of Justice State Criminal Alien Assistance Program grant for the Sheriff's Office. Mr. Wagner.
Sheriff Wayne Davis is asking the board to approve an additional appropriation of $3,784 and $11,914 received from the 2022 and the 2023 grant from the U.S. Department of Justice State Criminal Alien Assistance Program. The grant funds are used for authorized overtime, special operations, and off-site security of inmates during medical procedures. And Sheriff Wayne Davis is here, she's ready for it.
In regard to this appropriation, what is the desire of the board?
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to approve the additional appropriation of $15,698 received from the U.S. Department of Justice State Criminal Alien Assistance Program.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor? Is 6-0, Jennifer. 12I, an additional appropriation referencing Fieldale Heritage Revitalization Project for the Planning, Zoning, and Inspections Department. Mr. Wagner.
In 2021, Henry County was awarded a $500,000 grant through the Virginia Appalachian Regional Commission and followed in 2022 with a $1 million grant from the Community Development Block Grant Funds. Both grants were awarded specifically for renovations to the historic Fieldale Community Center. And you've probably heard about these two grants, but the board never took any formal action on appropriating those funds. It is for that reason, staff is asking the board to approve an appropriation of $1.5 million received from these two grants for the Fieldale Community Center project.
Ms. Buchanan, I believe this project is in your area, if you desire to make a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to approve the additional appropriation of $1.5 million received from the Virginia Appalachian Regional Commission and a Community Development Block Grant for the renovation to the historic Fieldale Community Center.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor? It is 6-0, Jennifer.
Mr. Chairman, I do want to say that I did talk with someone at the Fieldale Community Center, and they had a great past weekend with the pools opening. They were very pleased with the attendance.
And as I understand it, the weekend didn't start just a couple of days ago. It was a lot of hard work put into the area with volunteers coming together to, I guess what you say, clean up, spruce up, and get prepared for that day. So they should be recognized as well. 12J, an additional appropriation referencing asset forfeiture funds for the Commonwealth Attorney's Office. Mr. Wagner.
Commonwealth Attorney Andrew Nestor is asking the board to approve an additional appropriation of $1,341 from state asset forfeiture funds for the purchase of furniture and fixtures.
In regard to this additional appropriation, what action would the board like to take?
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion to approve the additional appropriations of $1,341 from state excess forfeiture funds for the purchase of furniture and fixtures as requested.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor? It is 6-0, Jennifer. 12K, a categorical transfer referencing school buses and safety upgrades for the school board. Mr. Wagner.
The school board is requesting board supervisors to approve 2 categorical transfers, including $253,854 from the administration attendance and health category to the transportation category, and $152,168 from the administration attendance and health category to the operation and maintenance category. And according to a memo from Superintendent Dr. Amy Lewis, the funds will be used to purchase 2 new school buses and to upgrade the school surveillance systems and classroom door locks.
All right, the board has adequate background material as part of its packet that you've had an opportunity to review. In regard to this categorical transfers, what is the desire of the board?
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to approve the categorical transfers totaling $406,022 as requested.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor? It is 6-0, Jennifer. That takes us to agenda item number 13, an appropriation of the FY 2024-2025 county budget. Mr. Wagner.
So you all, at your April 23rd meeting, adopted the fiscal year 2024-2025 total county budget. These actions included setting the tax rates, adopting the school budget, and the total county budget. However, no county funds can be expended or obligated until an appropriation has been made. And in your packet, you have a draft appropriations resolution for your consideration. Changes from last year are noted in red. And the proposed resolution reflects categorical appropriations based on previous board decisions. There are only minor changes in the appropriation resolution, but if you'll indulge me, I'll take a few more moments to go through each section, make sure there's no questions about it, since it's probably the first time at least a couple of you have seen this. So as I mentioned, the appropriations resolution is your authorization to county staff to spend and obligate county funds for the purpose intended. The expenditures cost centers are referenced in Exhibit B in your packet, which is on starts on page 96. That's in section 1, talks about that. Nothing in this document includes the contingency fund. So anytime there's an appropriation from the contingency fund, you do that directly, as well as all expenditures of the opioid abatement funds has to be appropriated by this board. Section 2 is just kind of legalese to basically say the appropriations don't mean anything if there are not funds available actually to appropriate, or can unencumber and unappropriated meet such appropriations. Section 3 is somewhat important because it gives us definitions that kind of dictate to the rest of the document. Section 3, all appropriations here and authorized shall be on the basis of cost centers for all departments and agencies, including schools and social services. So from the county's standpoint, we think of cost centers generally by each department. So for example, there's a cost center for finance, there's a cost center for purchasing. In the sheriff's department, there's several cost centers within the sheriff's office controls, such as law enforcement, corrections, civil, courts and civil, animal control, public safety. There's several cost centers in that department with the career staff is in one, public safety, fire marshal, several different cost centers. We also use that same term for categorical grouping when we talk about other funds. So it specifically references single lines in the exhibits A and B. So for the purpose of this document, when we're talking about cost centers, we're talking about categories when we're talking about school funding, the Department of Social Services fund, because they are a single line item on the exhibit. So section 4 kind of starts to explain a little bit more about those agencies. The school board, the social services, and agencies that the county only serves as a fiscal agent are separately granted authority for the implementation of the appropriate funds for their respective operations, such as the school board, social services, and we only serve as their fiscal agent, and they are authorized to approve transfers of unencumbered balances and transfers within each classification of expenditure. For example, in the school budget, they can move money, put the money anywhere they want to in the instructional category. They can move, for example, and I don't have very specific information, but in general, like if, for example, if the school board sees fit to move teachers from Magna Vista to Bassett High School, they can move those funds between those facilities easily because they're all in the instructional category. Okay. Also in this resolution, there are some restrictions which refers to section 9 and 10 we'll talk about. And then agencies that county only serves as a fiscal agent may appropriate any additional grants or donations or other revenue it receives with approval of the county administrator. For example, the Department of Social Services routinely gets donations and small grants here and there, and they don't have to bring those to you every month to do that. They can be appropriated without coming back to you. Section 5 grants the county administrator certain authority to keep from having to bring a lot of requests back to you. Grants the authority of the county administrator to transfer any unencumbered balance or portion thereof of any classification expenditure to another within the same cost center up to $50,000. So to put that in layman's terms, you grant me the authority to move money around in cost centers if it's unencumbered. And I'll give you an example. Within the law enforcement category, you know, the sheriff may have a need for more ammunition because something else came available and he had a little bit of money left over in travel, and we can move that money around within that law enforcement cost center without bringing it to you all. Or some of the regular things we see near the end of the year, building maintenance things. Sometimes we wait near the end of the year to see how much, if we had any major emergencies in building funds, and we might approve to do more painting or do more renovation or something like that with year-end funds in those building categories if we've had cost savings in it. This also applies in the sense of a categorical transfer for the school system. This document grants the county administrator the authority to approve categorical transfers within the schools up to $50,000 upon request.
And and that's also per item, so if there were multiple items, each one could be up to 50,000.
Right.
Correct.
And we're, the word that the finance department uses stacking. We never stack transfers to avoid bringing them to you. So I mean, we can't transfer 50,000 today and 50,000 tomorrow and 50,000 next day to get to 150,000. They have to be separate projects, but that's a great question. So for example, if a water line was to break at a school system and they needed an additional 50,000 in the maintenance category, then they could transfer that from instruction, with my signature. So that would be Section 6 basically says all outstanding encumbrances, including assigned and committed funds, both operating and capital, as of June 30th, 2024 shall be reappropriated to the fiscal year 2025. Every year, at the end of the year, we bring these encumbrances of purchases that have been entered, projects that's been started that may have not been completed, they've been assigned, they've been committed, but we need to carry them over into the next year. Section 7, we added the last sentence there with the ability, by doing that, to eliminate Section 8 and part of Section 9. So at the end of the fiscal year, all unencumbered appropriations lapse for budget items. So there's none of this if we don't spend all our electricity money, we don't carry it over to the next year. It lapses at the end of every fiscal year, any unencumbered funds or unspent. The exception to that is for if we get grant funds or project funds that are specific to that grant, then the grant, they automatically carry over to the next fiscal year until that project or until that grant is finished. So we were able to eliminate Section 8 because we simplified that for the new Section 8 talks about change orders for projects, particularly when you think about large projects like we're spending $22 million or so at Commonwealth Crossing with one vendor. Sometimes time is of essence in those situations. It grants the county administrator authority to approve construction change orders to contracts up to an increase of 25% or $100,000, whichever is greater. And this is taken directly from the Code of Virginia. This language mirrors the Code of Virginia. And I'm able to approve all change orders if there's a reduction in contract. When this was changed in the General Assembly, and we talked about it in previous meetings here, the Board of Supervisors did approve it, but they asked if that amount was over $50,000, that I let you know by email within 3 business days. Section 9, Board of Supervisors, approval of the Board of Supervisors, any grants, funds, and award of contracts related to a new grant, the county shall constitute the appropriation of both the revenue receiving the grant and the expenditure. In other words, we get a grant, you don't have to take 2 actions, both on the revenue side and the expenditure side, as the same is for further down there, it talks about the county administrator may increase or reduce any grant appropriation to the level approved by the granting agency in the fiscal year. For example, we may bring it to you to appropriate a $100,000 grant for a particular project. But once we finally get all the grant documents, it turns out to $99,100 or $105,000. I don't have to bring that back to you for those minor changes in the appropriation, as long as the money is used for the original intent of the grant. Throughout the document, we updated the proper title for the chief financial officer. You'll see those. The sentence at the end of Section 9 there talks about what I said earlier about grants. Or if we finish out a grant, we've got a $100,000 grant, and we've done everything the grant authorized, and there's $10,000 left, then you authorize us to automatically give that money back to the grantee without coming back to you and say, hey, can we pay back the grantee? Section 10 allows us to administratively to reduce revenues and expenditures related to programs funded in part by the Commonwealth of Virginia and the federal government. Sometimes those numbers change, and we can do that without bringing them back to you. A good example of that is further illustrated in the last sentence. Is we get tax revenue every month from the 1% sales tax for school construction and renovation. Depending on how much our citizens and visitors spend that month, that number can fluctuate. So when we do a budget, we estimate what that's going to be, but it's never exactly $5 million like we estimated in next year's budget. Most of the time it's a little bit more or a little bit less. This appropriation says just adjust it to whatever actually comes in, and that money will be available for school renovation and construction. And then Section 11 basically gives the chief financial officer the authority to make those transfers if they are approved by the county to do the fiscal transfer within our financial software. Section 12 deals more with the treasurer, where he can advance monies to and from various funds of the county to allow maximum cash flow efficiency. Fortunately, with the strong fund balance, we don't do a lot of that, but if we were a cash-strapped locality, it may be important to delay some purchases until tax revenue comes in for the year. We get, most of our revenue for the county comes in December and January, November, December, January. So the other 9 months, we don't get as much revenue. That gives the treasurer the authority to maximize that should we have cash flow issues. The section 13 gives the county administrator authority to move within cost centers related to building, industrial development authority, self-insurance fund, Children's Services Act. Those with a lot of variability. And where you see it most is like building grounds. We do an estimate for each building that the county owns in our budget. We put an electrical number in this building, an electrical number for the sheriff's office. We put maintenance and routine stuff, but sometimes, like if an air conditioning unit went out on top of the courthouse, it may not be enough in that line item, but there's probably enough in all the building grounds. This grants me the authority to move between the building categories. And that's the only one, these listed here, that I have the authority to move between cost centers without being approved. But it still is up to a maximum of $50,000. 14 basically talks about that we abide by the purchasing ordinance and all applicable state statutes. 15 basically says funds should be expended for the purpose indicated in the budget, and therefore funds may not be transferred for operating expenses to capital projects or vice versa without your approval. However, the county administrator can move funds around up to $50,000 from one capital project to another. And that happens occasionally. We budget $389,000 for a garbage truck, and the bids come back at $390,000. Might have $1,000 left over in sheriff's vehicles that I can move over and make sure we cover that without having to come back and ask you all for more money. No purchase orders in an amount over $2,000 shall be issued without the prior review of the county administrator. Section 17, we receive revenue from the operation of the adult detention center inmate telephone system, and by law that has to be used to offset the cost of operating the facility. And likewise, the canteen funds there must be used for medical and personal care items to the inmates. It restates that. Section 18, we added this. This is new, probably the real difference for this year. You may recall last year, we increased the transit occupancy tax from 2% to 5% with the goal of helping offset some of the cost of operating the Smith River Sports Complex. So it's real clear to our auditors and anyone outside looking, says all revenue from the transit occupancy tax in excess of the base tax rate of 2% shall be designated and spent solely to offset the cost of tourism and travel-related expenses incurred in operating the Smith River Sports Complex and other tourism-related expenses. Section 19, basically these are for like minor events. We do the Smith River Sports Fest, and we do a Pony League baseball tournament. We're selling concession stand, concessions. We might sell $100, we might sell $1,000. But if we sell $1,000 worth of concessions, we buy $1,000 worth of concessions. So this basically says that you give us authority for these very cash fluid operations on a very small amount to appropriate those funds as they come in, and that should be for the events. It also includes the EMS training programs. The Department of Public Safety gets, they may teach a class and then they get reimbursed for teaching a class from the Commonwealth of Virginia. Then money goes back into the training fund without bringing it back to you each month. It also includes Children's Services Act and some other things. Section 20 talks about consultants. It's been many, many years ago. This board said we cannot do any business with consultants without first getting your approval. So we have listed those that we currently have agreements with in some way, shape, or form, or we anticipate we may need to use them over the next year. And I'm happy to answer any questions about any of them that you may have. We deleted some, we've added some, we changed the name of some, but they are listed there for your consideration. In accordance with the Code of Virginia and the purchasing policy in Section 21, we talk about surplus property and how we handle the disposal of that. And then Section 22 talks about our authorization to issue checks to pay the bills. Section 23 basically says that for any performance agreement with the business or industry, when you approve a performance agreement, when the board of supervisors approve a performance agreement, it automatically includes such corporation to fulfill that obligation. And then Section 24 deals with our outside agencies. Is one of the requirements you all put into place many years ago that before an agency can get funding from the county, it must submit an audit from the certified public accountant licensed to perform audits in Virginia. And then Section 25 was added when we built the jail and did the financing on the new jail to allow the county administrator to move money as it was related to the bonds, issuance of the bonds, and ensure we're in compliance with the bond covenants. If you approve of this resolution, it does require a roll call vote. Any questions?
I have maybe a question and a comment. For the consultants and the bids, the contracts that go out, we do fairly often get asked how you make those decisions, just looking at some of the companies that you choose. Could you just briefly tell us or explain to the public how you go about choosing the consultants or choosing the bid from the contractors?
So all our procurement's done within state procurement guidelines as well as the county's purchasing ordinance. So there's different guidelines for different types of services. For products and non-consulting services, they say cleaning services, that's not considered a consultant. We don't use those, but if it's a bid, then we would issue either a bid if it's, or an RFP, depending on the type of service. If some services require a bid where you take the lowest price and whoever gets the lowest price, then that's who you go with. You have to take the lowest bid. For items such as consulting services, and when it's not as cut and dry, the low bid may not all be the same. Like say we're hiring an architect, we interview the architects or consultants that would be providing the proposal based on what they put in the proposal, and there's generally a scoring matrix that's determined what's most important for the project. So there may be a performance based on experience. Have they built a school before? Have they, how many people are we going to have working on this project? What timeline is going to get it done in? And then ultimately, how much is it going to cost as well? So there's a lot of factors go into it sometimes. So that's how we do RFPs for that type of service. And most of these listed here are not big projects. I'll give you an example. Codes and Public Strategies is your legislative lobbyists. They're a consulting firm in the sense that they consult you on lobbying legislative matters. We interview those, we brought a recommendation back to you. So it's not a considerable amount of money for a lot of this. To give you an example, the very last one, Young Asking Plan Gregory Law, I recently reached out to them and I was able to go ahead and do this because they were paid through the EDC, but they provided me guidance on a performance agreement that we're working on for the press class expansion project. So then I had them to review our performance agreement to make sure it was legally sound and they worked correctly with the company. But because I didn't have them on the list yet here, Economic Development Corporation paid me. That's one reason I added them. If I use them again, it would be for similar service or very low-cost item. And some of these we've used in the past, we may not use.
Well, that's it, because it does come up when you can use services or businesses in our area, the protocol for all of that and reaching the decisions that you choose, who you choose. Thank you, Mr. Ray.
And every RFP, and I can't quote it, I don't remember exactly what it is, but there's the state sets guidelines. So if we issue an RFP for architectural services, for example, we can only use that for so many times before we have to put it out for bid again. And most times, I can't remember if it's 5 years or 7 years, but there is a time limit depending on the type of service of how often you have to do that to be in compliance with the regulations.
Thank you.
And I'd like to ask, you mentioned like a rubric. I'm an educator, so we use rubric. Is there do we develop that rubric? Is that a state mandated? Is there something that we can put in there that allows local vendors better opportunity to be awarded some of these opportunities. Because I'm looking at some of the, money that we're distributing, Roanoke, Greensboro, Czech, Virginia, Bridgewater, and there's a lot of money going out of Henry County, and it would be great if some of that money could stay here.
Yeah, that's an excellent question. I think the staff wants to use local firms as much as possible. We're very limited on a scoring matrix that would allow us to give preferential treatment to a local vendor. And it's ultimately where the low bid is. And there's other things. You mentioned Czech, Virginia. To sell an ambulance in Virginia, you have to be a licensed dealer, and none of our licensed dealers sells ambulances here. So, we can't just go to Nelson Automotive and buy an ambulance. So there's other things.
Correct, and I get that. I'm just, for those things that we have people here or businesses here who provide those services, if we could, create some way for them to get a better opportunity to receive some of these bids.
So bids are straightforward if it's a bid. We have to take the lowest bidder as long as they meet all the requirements of the bid. There is some administrative discretion in awarding RFPs and consulting services, but you have to weigh other factors in consideration, such as experience and those type things. So, most of those consulting services, we don't have those services here, but you could build that into your matrix, certainly, if it's, someone readily available that you could, drive across town and meet with more easily. That's going to reduce your costs, these types of things for consulting services, when there's an RFP put out. But for a simple bid, we have to take the lowest bid to be in compliance with our purchasing ordinance and state purchasing codes.
Among those bids, though, it is stated what the minimum requirements or the expected performance is. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. Thank you. Other questions or comments? Yes, sir.
Well, only other question I have, I would like to have some discussion about lump sum versus categorical funding for the school system. Should we do that prior to voting on this item, or should we do that afterwards?
So this would.
If it becomes a vote. Okay.
Sure. But I think I had mentioned to you that we were going to make significant changes to budget once the Commonwealth approved their school budget. So I have some added information I was going to provide to you at the end of the meeting. So we're going to have to revisit the topic. It would be my preference if you would approve this today. That would give an all starting point. We'd have it out of the way. The appropriation would be set, and the county and the schools could start issuing contracts that will start immediately on July 1st, like for maintenance agreements. Some of those things are really time sensitive if we don't get these approved. As soon as you get them approved, easier it is for us to get them on the schedule. And then it would be my preference when we get to approving the school budget, the revised school budget, there's got to be another public hearing. There's going to be more dialogue with you all. Is that if you decide to do that, we do it all at that time. So we can move forward with this today.
Okay.
Other questions or comments? Okay. In regard to the appropriation of the FY 2024-2025 county budget, what is the desire of the board in adopting the appropriation resolution that has been detailed to you?
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to adopt the appropriation resolution as presented.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Mr. Wagner or Mr. Powell, will you poll the board for a vote, please?
Board members, how do you vote on the matter before you regarding the appropriation resolution of the fiscal year 2024-25 county budget? Dr. Collins?
Yes.
Mr. Phillips?
Yes.
Mr. Dillard?
Yes.
Ms. McKinn?
Yes.
Mr. Bryant?
Yes.
Mr. Adams?
Yes. All right, that carries for the record, Jennifer, with a 6-0 vote. Agenda item number 14, a presentation on local energy efficiency action plan. Is Mr. Martin
I'll
taking
tell you
this?
while he's getting ready. Public Information Officer Brandon Martin has taken the lead on this project. So he's going to come forth and introduce the topic and welcome our presenters from George Mason University.
Thank you, Dale. Before I introduce our speakers, I'll make sure they're still online. Paul and Joel, are you there?
Hey, Brandon, yeah.
You guys can go ahead and turn your video on if you'd like. They're about ready for your presentation. So I've been working with George Mason since fall of last year to help develop a local energy efficiency plan, and part of that process was developing a task force from various stakeholders around the community. We got together in February timeframe and had those meetings, and we have the final copy of the action plan available now. Joel is going to give an overview of that entire process, and then at the end we'll be asking for you guys to set a public comment period. I'll post the plan on our website for people that will be able to see it, and they'll be able to email me or call me with any questions they may have. So with that, I'll turn it over to the professors from George Mason. Joel, you can do your introductions and then share your screen whenever you're ready.
Great. Yeah, thanks, Brandon. Hopefully you can see my slides here. Good. Thanks for that. Yeah, I'm Joel Hicks, and my colleague and I, Paul Lugosh, just want to spend about 10 minutes or so just to orient you with the process that we went through to create an energy action plan, and just make ourselves available if you have any questions before we sort of encourage you to release it for public comment. With that, I will turn it over to my colleague, Paul Lugosh.
Good afternoon, everyone. So, the big motivator for the Energy Action Plan are working with communities. We have three here. The first is kind of a kitchen table issue, and that is reduce energy costs, reducing the bills that residents and businesses face. The second is improving the property and community resilience of including property values when we're thinking about things like flooding and heat. And the third, and perhaps the most important, and the reason we kind of brought in a lot of these municipalities, is that there's a lot of money available to do the above two things, reduce energy costs and improve community resilience. The one catch, though, is if you do want to get a lot of this money, and it comes at things like the Inflation Reduction Act, bipartisan infrastructure law, and other funds out there, in order to get that money, you have to have an energy action plan in place. So the federal government is saying, look, you want to play in this sandbox, you need to do some thinking about what it is you want to do in your future. And that's kind of the impetus for working with Henry County.
Yeah, and so just to orient you who was participating in the basically entire year-long process, Paul and I from the Schar School of Policy and Government, along with some colleagues in the College of Science, were the participants at George Mason University. We had 2 graduate students, 2 undergraduate students. Like to highlight, one of them is on listening in here, Jared Weaver. He's one of our graduate students who was part of the program. We had 3 folks from your staff who were there as sort of technical advisors, really useful throughout the process. Brandon Martin, Julie Shelton, Micah Montgomery. And then we had several folks volunteering throughout the community. One of them here, Joe Bonanno here from West Piedmont Planning District was one of those members, but you can see the names there. We had a nice sort of spread of input from different interest groups and residents and business leaders throughout the community, who again, were all part of the process throughout the entire academic year.
We had 4 phases for this project. We began with working with the staff to identify key community stakeholders that would be representative of the community and that would serve as a task force. We completed a greenhouse gas inventory, which Joel will explore next. Then we had these physical meetings. We did it at the New College Institute. We also combined it with City of Martinsville. And, the purpose of these meetings was to inform and educate the task force about what we found in the inventory, but most importantly about the strategies and actions they could recommend to you to reduce energy costs and improve resilience. And towards the end, what we did is we facilitated a discussion to achieve some type of consensus around actions that would go into the final plan. And then we spent some time working on the final version, and we really got both the task force and the county staff to come together to finalize the recommendations. We released it in May. It's available for your approval. We're in the final phase of the project, and that is assisting Henry County with implementing parts of the Energy Action Plan. For example, any interest in pursuing grants, we have a team of students, a brand new team of students available to help with writing grants and doing other things.
Yeah, so just to summarize some of the findings and just to make it clear, a lot of the funds that Paul was talking about that are coming from the state, federal government are looking at things that are going to reduce pollution. About 85% of emissions comes from energy use, so really talking about greenhouse gases and energy are sort of synonymous. And so we looked across all of your sectors. We worked with your utility providers and with your other service providers and got a summary of your work, where the emissions were coming from, which really informed our meetings in looking at, where the most impact would be for those sectors that are generating the most energy, which in most cases translates to generating more emissions, especially when you're burning hydrocarbons. And so this breakout is actually pretty similar to what we would expect from other communities. Transportation sector, again, is about a third of where emissions are coming from. You look at the residential, commercial, and industrial sectors, those are then going to collectively be a pretty large chunk of your emissions, no surprise there. We've also looked at things like solid waste, your landfills. You were in a community that had some agricultural emissions that we were able to estimate, as well as water and wastewater emissions as well. So you can kind of see that. And again, all of this is incorporated in the plan. So if any of the residents are interested in seeing, what is shaping at least part of the basis for some of our recommendations, they can see that information here. And so to complement that effort, we did have some pretty good information about trends that are happening in Virginia and in Henry County. And so if you took the same chart I showed you and kind of stack it in a different way, and you trended out what the emissions would be if we did nothing different, and if we're sort of business as usual, that was sort of our starting point. We know that the grid is decarbonizing sort of on its own anyway, and so we do see kind of a downward slope where that top line sort of reflects what we call business as usual. We looked at two sort of hypothetical targets to sort of frame the impact of our actions. Climate scientists sort of look at 2030 and 2050 as key timeframes where we need to reduce to have more than a greater 50% chance of keeping temperatures below 2 degrees centigrade. We likely need to reduce our emissions by 50% relative to 2005 levels, and pretty much all the way to carbon neutral by 2050. So if you look at your chart, since we don't have 2005 greenhouse gas levels for Henry County, we do know that in general, the US has reduced their emissions by about 15% relative to 2005, which would mean, if Henry County wanted to meet those levels, they would have to reduce their emissions by 35% between now and 2030. Again, if nothing was to be done, we probably expect about a 15% reduction, which leaves about a 20% gap that proactive actions that would need to be taken and then obviously much more aggressive ones, in the subsequent 2 decades. So this sort of gives you what is the intensity sort of things we would have to do, and we will kind of look at this again when we look at the effect of modeling some of the actions that are in the Energy Action Plan. We'll kind of see what the effect of that is on this chart a little bit later.
So when we worked with the task force about what kind of recommendations they were going to make to you, we had 6 key criteria that we wanted to ensure we were meeting. The first was effectiveness, and that's in terms of reducing energy and improving resilience. The other was cost benefit. This had to be something that at the end of the day, you'd see a return on investment in a reasonable amount of time. The third, and perhaps most important, was feasibility. To the local government, is this something you can implement? There's certain things in your control, there's certain things not in your control. I want to make sure that when we're talking about things we want you to do, that there's a feasible possibility of you doing that. Equity is an important thing. It's not just burden, but it's also benefit. So if you're going to get a grant, we want to make sure that it's equitably distributed to all the residents. Co-benefits is an add-on. So if you're reducing energy somewhere, you might be reducing pollution, you might be preserving rural character, you might be doing a lot of other things. And finally, you've had exercises in comprehensive planning. And what we wanted to do is we wanted to identify where in the recommendations these are consistent with your latest comprehensive plan. And so we do that. We do all the 6 bullet points in the Energy Action Plan.
So based on those criteria and some really great discussions, I won't go into the details, but Brandon can certainly fill you in on the depth of the types of actions that we considered. Paul is going to basically give you a summary of how many actions in each of the sectors are we talking about that you'll find in the plan. We took all of those actions and looked at what would the impact be if we were to accomplish those. So they were there was no intention of necessarily reaching a target, but we did have the capability of looking at the actions and saying, hey, what if we were able to implement them? What would the impact be on the graph that we saw before, the business as usual? So this is the same thing you saw before. The blue line is if we did nothing, this would be what the trends would be. And so we did actually see some pretty significant reductions. So as we mentioned before, we needed to reduce emissions by about 35% by 2030. And we saw that if we actually implemented those things, we would basically be down to about 15% of the delta in meeting this, what's called the science-based targets. And you see the gap widens a bit, but we did want to reflect what visually, taking these actions would be relative to doing nothing. And you can see, everything. The area where there's white is where emissions were actually reduced based on, again, modeling those actions that are in the plan that Paul will sort of summarize right now.
I think the most important thing at a higher level to tell you about the actions that the task force recommended is that they're very modest. A lot of these actions are to study and evaluate something and then to take action. So Joel and I have worked on many climate action plans. Joel is actually an elected official in Pennsylvania. He's run these type of committees from your end. What we did is we threw out a lot, and the task force selected certain things, like in buildings, there are 4 subsector goals and 8 actions. Some of those actions are considered high priority, medium priority, or low. You can dig into the action plan and kind of read them. I'll just tell you, my takeaway is that they're all very reasonable. They meet the 6 criteria points I articulated earlier. I think if you took 5 minutes and kind of reviewed them, hopefully you'd nod your head and say, yeah, these are really good initial steps for a county of ours to take?
Yeah, and so we did a very similar thing here. I'm a council member here in the borough of Carlisle, Pennsylvania. We did something very similar. We created a draft climate action plan and put it out for public comment. And just to wrap things up, right now, I think what we're looking for is just make sure you're comfortable putting this document up for public comment. It certainly has the endorsement of all of the officials and volunteers and university staff that have been part of it. We're certainly available to answer any questions. If you have any concerns before releasing it for public comment. Eventually, answering any questions or engaging in any questions from the community. At some point, the board would approve the plan, and then we could discuss if there are particular actions that you would like assistance with. And I think we're in the early stages of working to do some grant writing, but certainly want to stay engaged with you if there's interest in how we might be able to help implement some of these plans. So those are sort of the next steps. And with that, I think we'll just open it up. Brandon, if there are any questions, but yeah, thank you for your time.
Yeah, thank you for that overview, Joel. Members of the board, do you have any questions for the professors?
I know the board has received this afternoon kind of a summary of the 49 pages that you had as your background material leading up to this, and more to come as far as when this rolls out. The action that we need to take today is officially set a public comment period that ends on June 24th. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
So what is the desire of the board in regard to setting a public comment period?
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to set a public comment period ending June 24, 2024 for input on the draft energy action plan.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor? It's 6-0, Jennifer. Joel and Paul, thank you all for your time today. I was kind of bringing a number of pages, and I realize in a short period of time to where we can better understand kind of where we're headed with this. We know that there will be more information forthcoming. And likewise, Brandon, we'd like to thank you for bringing this to us.
Thank you.
That takes us to agenda item 15, informational items, and I'll begin by taking comments from the board, beginning with Dr. Cobbler.
Just to have, Brandon, just again for you, just looking over this and listening as we're going along, and this being a new thing, this is simply a plan, a strategic plan that you are presenting and offering to the board and to the community to potentially consider some of this. Because I just want to make sure, I'm reading the percentage, I saw it before, doing a little research on my own also about the climate change and all of these things that are coming also, I know, from the federal level to rural communities. I'm reading the percentages, and I'm looking at what we're being asked to do, and I'm looking at timelines on this. My question to you is, we're approaching this so we don't leave Henry County out. Of course, we want things to be cleaner and greener. We all want that. But just making sure that this is just being offered to us, and then when we set a public meeting, then that will be an opportunity to do some more research on what this is actually saying from George Mason University.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay.
The public comment period is scheduled to go until June 24th, but you could take action on it at any point in time in the future. It doesn't necessarily have to be at your next board meeting if you so choose. Our primary impetus for having this is we have to have it if we're going to apply for some of those grants, so we just have to have something in place. And right now, we have the preliminary work done by the task force, so the thing we're looking to get now is the public's views on some of those goals, and you can retool it however you want. It doesn't necessarily have to be this. It can be edited and changed however you see.
Okay, thank you.
And it's a non-binding plan. If the board chooses not to implement anything in it, then you don't have to implement anything.
As long as we have a plan and we're not, and I think the purpose is so that we're not left out of some potential funding from whatever source for whatever reason, that what you're telling me is that the numbers and the percentages and the graphs and everything that were being shown, nothing, so to speak, is written in stone. You're saying it's non-binding. So we have a strategic plan that can be amended and changed at any time. Is that what you're saying?
That's correct. And the one thing that I thought was most impressive about our analysis was that in Henry County, with our agricultural and forest land, we actually remove more carbon from our community than we generate through all these other things.
Yeah.
So we actually, we don't have we have a net negative carbon emission if you take into consideration what our forest land does for removing carbon from the atmosphere. That's good news for us.
Thank you, Brandon.
Okay. Mr. Pruitt.
I don't have anything.
Mr. Dillon.
Yeah, just different conversation in reference to energy, but our lobbyists were here sometime last year, and AEP was raising the rates. And I asked a question about me or someone being able to get in front of the SEC to have the conversation, because AEP can't raise the rates unless it's been approved, and hadn't heard anything back, and didn't know if you could check with them to see if they found out anything, if they had a conversation, because I also know AEP is scheduled or has raised the rates again this year. So if you could let me know about that, that would be great.
Yeah, I'll follow up on that, and I do know that anytime they do a rate increase, they accept public comment, and our lobbyists did make contact with their delegate, or folks who did register comments related to his constituents and the impact that electrical rates were having on his constituents. So I know that was done related to this topic.
Okay, I'd like to, because she was going to tell me the process for, citizen to come in and speak and share their thoughts as well.
I'll follow up on that.
Yes, sir.
Ms. Buchanan.
No, sir.
Mr. Ryan.
No, sir.
And I don't have that. Mr. Wagner.
So I just spent a few moments on the school budget. You may recall when I presented the budget to you, I said with surety that the state would be coming out with a new budget that would alter what we were doing and need to be changed. So on May 13th, the governor finally signed the state budget of $188 billion. And fortunately, it did include a lot of new money for our school system and school systems all across the Commonwealth. So the Commonwealth did step up and do their obligation of help fund schools as constitutionally required. I provided a spreadsheet to you in front of you. The numbers I have here are provided from VACO as estimates. I have not received the final calculations from the Department of Education of the exact amount, but I'm pretty sure these are really close estimates to give you some kind of idea of what we're looking at. Just some kind of highlights from fiscal year 24 budget. We anticipate that the new school budget will increase $15 million over last year's budget, and that'll be over $8 million more than they requested to you all, thanks to the Commonwealth coming through with an additional $11 million for our school systems. I'm glad they were able to come through with their obligations. Consequently, all state funding is based on a formula where the locality has to match some of those funds. And because of the extra funds, that's going to require us as a local government to provide additional funding as well to our school system based on the LCI. So just preliminary numbers, have those two columns highlighted that are estimates, but it looks like this board is going to have to come up with above and beyond the required amount of what we budgeted previously, $1.6 million for our school system. we've identified some areas there where the local funds needed to finish this. It's probably gonna be closer to 1.3 million. And I'm just throwing that out there to you today, because I don't wanna ask you to act on something when we don't have the final numbers. But generally, we get those numbers within 30 days after the budget approves, so we'll get it before the June meeting. And of course, our school system, fiscal year starts July 1st. I'm sure they want some thought on how the budget looks. So I want you to be thinking about a couple things. Do we want to have a special meeting, just to have a work session on the school budget with the idea, because, you know, no matter what we do, we're going to have to advertise a public hearing. These numbers greatly exceed the 1% of the budget that we had before, so a public hearing will be required. To do a public hearing, it requires notification in the media and other things, so we need some time to do those types of things. And then ultimately, if you have any guidance for me of how you would like to fill that $1.3 billion gap, do you want to transfer it from the contingency fund, your reserve funds? Do you want us to cut that out of other budgets? Do you want us to cut sheriff's deputies or parks and recreation to come up with that 1.3 million? Those are just examples. Or are you willing to raise taxes to make up that difference? Just, quick back of the envelope kind of calculation. If we want to make that up to a tax increase, we would need to raise the real estate taxes to 61 cents from the current 55.5 cents per $100 of value in real estate. So, just give you something to think about. Any questions related to that?
Myself personally, I think that it wouldn't do us harm to have a work session on it.
Give us a timeline as to when it would be best to have all of this completed by, because I know July 1st will start a new fiscal year, correct?
Yeah, that's correct. And fortunately, the schools has been already appropriated $107 million, so they could start the school year and not be compromised. I think at this point, I don't know how they structure their compensation plan or anything like that, but it may not allow them to do their compensation and implementation of the compensation plan on July 1st if we don't approve the budget for July 1st. But I guess technically, if we pushed into July, they have some funds to get them started. I guess you say they're not open month, but ideally you would want to approve before July 1st. So I'm looking at my calendar now. Our June meeting is scheduled for June 25th. We would need to advertise 7 days prior with non-daily newspapers in our area now. So most time I would suggest we may not get the numbers until the 15th of June. So if we did that, I would encourage maybe a work session on maybe 18th. And then we would advertise and have a public hearing. That wouldn't give us enough time. We may have to do it soon.
18th on what day,
Yep.
Mr. Wagner?
What's that?
What's the 18th on?
Tuesday.
Tuesday.
We could advertise the public hearing without having all the final data, just put high numbers in it. But if you're planning to increase taxes, we would need to know that as well, because we have to advertise that as well. So let me get back with you. It may have to be the week of June 10th if we have the data to have that meeting, in order to have the public hearing on June 25th, the last business day of the month before 16/28.
So you're going to let us know when you get the information, what day you...
I can reach back to you all, and if it's desirable, set up a special meeting to have a work session on the budget in time to advertise and have a public hearing at the June.
Well, let me ask you, with these numbers that you have provided here, the local discretionary money, the $3 million, that's not set in stone. Isn't there a debt service in that amount?
So in the original proposal that I sent to you, increased the local discretionary funds by 10%. You see that on the line item for the FY25 budget. For the example I gave you for the revised budget with the additional state revenue coming in, I show an example there of level funding that number to $3,053,903. That is discretionary money, but a portion of that is debt service, which is approximately approximately
$2 million.
$2.3, I think, million dollars. 2.5 million. So, and you could adjust that, but you can't reduce it below where they can't pay their debt service. It has to come out.
Can't reduce
And then that
it
would
lower
leave
than the
them with
2.5.
zero discretionary money.
Okay.
You know, and I'll say that, you know, we made some commitments with what we knew last month, and that we not, I'll use the word renege on those commitments to move money, do things to make it easier and better for us. I think we have to be thankful that the state has given our school system more funding, and I think it would not look good on us to make adjustments where it benefits us, the Board of Supervisors, and it doesn't benefit the school system to the maximum potential based off of what the state did. So hopefully we will look at all of the options, whether it's, you know, you mentioned taxes, you mentioned moving money from unassigned funds, or whatever other options we have to add on to what we've already approved, and not look at moving and adjusting what we've already approved to make it easier for us, or I guess, easier for us.
I wouldn't say it's easier for us, it's easier for the taxpayer.
Yeah, when
So
you
we have
said-
to
when
kind of
you-
balance that.
When you said for the supervisors, where's it for the county?
Well, for the county,
Not
and
supervisors.
you know, it's easier to just say we're going to give you less here and put it over there, versus making a tough decision of whether you raise taxes or whether you take money from unassigned funds. That's more difficult for us to do, because if we were to raise taxes, you know, that is difficult. If we pull money from the unassigned fund contract, that's more difficult than just to say, hey, we promised them $3,500,000 of that. We can just say we're going to, you know, add that to the additional funds we have to give, so that's $500,000 we don't have to find. So that's why I say it's easier for us. It's an easier decision, and you know, we have to make some difficult decisions, and I think the state has really rewarded the school system, and I think we have to look at, if the state's going to do that, then you know, we as a board may have to make some tough decisions to make sure that our school system get all of the funds that we promise, all of the funds that, you know, that they need, so they can maximize the funds that they do receive. And I don't say that as an employee of the school system. I say that as a citizen. I say that as a individual who, you know, wants to see our youth and our educators have the resources, the funding, the supplies, and everything that they need to best maximize our school system.
I think what I look at it is that this special meeting that I'm asking for, that Mr. Wagner has made a suggestion maybe we do, there's a work session to come up with a plan to justify what we do. You know,
Correct.
right now, we've got a lot of new information come in on the new budget that's come in. So why not sit down as responsible leaders and discuss it in a responsible way and come up with a responsible answer?
And I think it would be irresponsible to take money that we've already promised and then use some of those funds to cover additional funds that we're now required to give the school system. And that's my opinion, and it's
But
not
that's what we're gonna do in this work session.
Correct.
We're gonna talk about that.
correct. And I just wanted to put that out there before we had the work session, so that as we're thinking, you know, my thoughts are considered, just so that we don't, you know, get into looking at ways to shift and move money, and then it makes it, and I'm going to continue using the word easier for us, as opposed to maybe we may have to make some difficult decisions to meet this new requirement that is upon us as supervisors, because the state has awarded the school system more funding.
Mr. Wagner, what action would you like from the board, or an indication?
I don't know of any at this time. Once we get the final data, I'll reach back to each of you, see if you want to schedule a work session based on the information.
Okay.
Until we get it, it's hard to give you a date to set.
And I realize that. Is there a general consensus of the board that we will be moving toward a work session?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
And I have one more thing.
Yes, sir.
Related to the budget, if I may. Yesterday, many of our employees participated in the Memorial Day Ruck 22 to memorialize and honor the men and women who have served their country and died in the line of duty. And I was very proud of our staff who stepped up and made donations for that, and then walked at the walk yesterday. So I just want to call attention to that. Very proud of them.
Great. Thank you.
That's all I have. Thank you.
With that, takes us to agenda item 16. I'll entertain a motion to go into closed meeting if someone will cite the items allowed by the Code of Virginia.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion the board convenes in a closed meeting as permitted under the following sections of the Virginia Freedom of Information Act. 2.23711A1 for discussion of appointees to the Parks and Recreation Board, Patrick and Henry Community College Board, and the Piedmont Regional Community Services Board. 2.23711A7 for discussion of pending legal matters. 2.23711A3 for discussion of the acquisition, disposal of real estate, and 2.23711A5 for discussion of as yet unannounced industries.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. All in favor? It is 6-0. Jennifer, I'll see you all upstairs in 5 minutes. Closed meeting on a motion by Mr. Bryant, second by Ms. Buchanan. Mr. Powell, will you poll the board, please?
Yes, sir. Board members, to the best of your knowledge, all public business matters lawfully exempted from open meeting requirements under Code of Virginia Section 2.2-3711 were heard, discussed, or considered in closed meeting. How do you vote? Mr. Adams?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Bryant?
Yes, sir.
Ms. Buchanan?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Dillard?
Yes, sir.
Dr. Cobbler?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Pruitt?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Pruitt, I believe that you have a district appointments for the board's consideration.
Yes, I move the board reappoints Michael Smith of the Ridgeway District and Sandra Adams of the Blackberry District to the Parks and Recreation Board for another term of 3 years.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor? Is 6-0. Jennifer. Ms. Buchanan, likewise, in regard to Patrick and Henry Community College, I believe that you have some appointments for the board's consideration.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I move to reappoint Stuart Warren, Wayne E. Moore, and Gary Collins to the Patrick and Henry Community College Board for a 4-year term that will expire June 30th, 2028.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor? Is 6-0. Jennifer. Mr. Bryant, I believe, as well, from the Piedmont Regional Community Services Board, you have some appointments for the board's consideration.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. I would make a motion that we appoint Bill Atkins and reappoint Garrett Dillard to the Piedmont Regional Community Service Board for a period of 3 years, expiring on June the 30th, 2027.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor? Is 6-0. Jennifer. Ms. Buchanan, I believe that in regards to a possible public hearing, you have some motions for the board's consideration.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I move that the board conduct a public hearing at the July 23rd meeting to consider a solar facility siting agreement between Henry County and CFVA Solar 111.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor? Is 6-0. Jennifer. And another as well?
I move that the board conduct a public hearing for the July 23rd, 2024 board meeting to consider a solar facility siting agreement between Henry County and CFVA Solar 106.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor? Is 6-0. Jennifer. Mr. Wagner, do you have any items of business?
One more, don't we, on the Bill Heights project?
Okay. I apologize. I didn't jot that down. Yes, sir. Mr. Bryant.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to make a motion to appropriate $28,000 from the board contingency funds for the purchase of 3 lots and the demolition of the existing structures related to the Villa Heights housing project.
Second.
Well, motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor? Is 6-0, Jennifer. Thank you, Mr. Bryant, for that. Mr. Wagner, do you have any items that we need to consider prior to a very brief recess? Board members? If not, we'll stand in recess for just a few minutes and begin promptly at 6 p.m. for our evening session. I'll call the evening session of the May 28, 2024 meeting of the Henry County Board of Supervisors back to order from a brief recess that we've taken from our afternoon meeting. I'd like to welcome all of our visitors. Remind you, if you want to address the board, you must sign up 7 days in advance of any of our regular meetings to be put on the agenda. The county administrator is the contact person for the board. However, the public may address the board under the agenda item, matters presented by the public that we'll take up later in the meeting tonight under agenda item number 19. Again, welcome everyone. Thank you for coming out and participating in your county government. We will begin tonight with our first agenda item 17, a presentation of the Community Connected Citizen Award. Mr. Wagner, if you would give us some background on this, please.
Sure. In the recent past, we was in discussion with Supervisor Deborah Buchanan about developing a recognition program that would recognize outstanding contributions by our residents, and there was some discussion and consent with the other supervisors. Staff has developed the Community Connected Citizen Award. The Community Connected Citizen Award, also known as the Triple C Award, which is also a play off of the county's new logo, recognizes Henry County residents who selfishly dedicate their time and energy into making our community a better place. The Triple C Award is designed to recognize the everyday contributions of our citizens. Small acts of public service can culminate to have a tremendous impact. These acts deserve to be commended and, more importantly, to be recognized. In order to qualify for the Triple C Award, the resident must be selected by the supervisor of their respective district, and the award can be given to individuals or to groups. No more than 2 awards will be given per district in a calendar year unless otherwise voted upon by the board. And Supervisor Buchanan has more information on the inaugural awardees.
Yes, Buchanan.
You know, I've been talking about this for a while, had talked with some of the other supervisors, had also talked with Jim, because the people that we're going to recognize tonight, their work hasn't gone unnoticed. And I had talked to Jim, since one side is the Blackberry District, one side is the, thank you, Horse Pasture District. And I said, you know, people like that, and when I say like that take the time, selflessly take the time to invest in their community, not once, not twice, not 3 times. This has been consistent for several years now. And I know when I drive down Hodges Farm Road, it's safer, it's more eye-appealing, because there are citizens in our community that give back by picking up the trash along the road, by mowing the right-of-way, and keeping it very eye-appealing. And I wished more people in our community did that. The group that I'm talking about, they take pride in their surroundings, they take pride in the community, they take the time, they exert their own energy to make this area safer and more eye-appealing for everyone. And so I'm happy tonight to recognize 3 different individuals. And of course, it doesn't go unsaid that they have family that probably helps or encourages or maybe reminds them to do some of the things that they do. I don't know. But the 3 people that we're wanting to recognize tonight, I'd like for them to come forward as I call their names. The first one is Patrick Rogers. You just come forward. The second one is James Rogers. And the third is Michael Matherly. Not in any order, it's just That's the way I had written their names down. And Jim, if you don't mind, I think it's a good idea that maybe all the board for the inaugural or the first Triple C award all join in down front and present these.
That would be perfectly fine. James, thank you for all that you all are doing. It's wonderful to run through that.
These two guys really, they deserve more credit than I do. We keep that really. It does. Every time I drive through, I'm really impressed.
And on behalf of the Board of Supervisors, we want to thank you for being a very positive part of our community. And keeping it, it's wonderful what you do. It really is. It doesn't go unnoticed.
Would you all be opening up the certificates?
Yep. 3, 2, 1. Thank you. Thank you. Thank y'all for all y'all do. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, while you all taking your seat, it's probably appropriate to point out that several members, individuals on that row also rucked 22 miles yesterday as part of the Memorial Day Ruck 22, including Mr. Rogers. And then he probably went home and mowed the grass.
That is great, and we had previously mentioned that in the earlier session, but thank you for adding to that. That even sheds a little more light on the individuals and taking that extra step in a number of different ways.
Yeah, and if Ms. Hughes is a little slow getting up to the podium next on the next agenda item, it's because she ran that 22-mile run.
We'll take up next agenda item number 18, General Highway Matters. We have with us Lisa Hughes from VDOT. Lisa, welcome.
Good evening. Just a couple of things to mention to you. Last week, we had a public information meeting on improvements to 220 from the 58 interchange down to the North Carolina line. And the purpose was to look at different improvements, portion, operational improvements, changes to intersections, maybe that would make it safe, more efficient. And then the last 3 miles, mainly for safety, for realignment. So if you haven't seen what we've presented at that meeting, I'd encourage you to do so. And there is a survey that you can take online until June the 3rd. That survey will be open. And so far that we have had actually 423 people take that survey, so that's excellent. So if you have any questions about it, just give me a call. And the only other item of note, beginning on June 3rd, a portion of George Taylor Road will be closed. We've got to do some repairs to the bridge down at the lower end. And that's all I have tonight.
Lisa, the bridge that's right down the bottom of the hill, Bassett, when is that supposed to be completed?
The completion date is in September, but we hope to be a little sooner than that.
Okay. It's the slowest moving bridge I think I've ever seen.
Stages, had to build it in stages, so it does take time. But it's coming.
Okay.
It's ahead of schedule, actually, so.
Also, Lisa, and I should have mentioned it before we started the meeting, usually I try to, but I noticed the other day going down Bolden Road, they have developed some potholes.
Okay.
I just want to let you know, I've got a lot of comments after the public session at Drew Mason, so I've sent all of those to the survey site and the link that's got all the information. But
That's great, and I didn't share with you the timeline. After the deadline, after June 3rd, we'll review all those comments, make any tweaks to what we've presented, and come back with a full report in late fall of this year.
And I bet a lot of people ask about the gravel, I guess when you just lay the gravel on the roads, and what's the logic for doing it that way? People have asked questions about that.
We've got a lot of different treatments that we do on roads. It depends on the cracking. You know, we can't put asphalt on everything. We'd like to, but it's just not economical for us. But the tar and gravel surface, it gives the pavement strength, it seals the cracks, and gives it, you know, additional years of life.
And of course, people's concern is that the gravels, one, they become dangerous, you know, when you're driving, plus they're getting all over the vehicles and stuff.
Yeah, but the surface treatment overlays we do now, they're actually pretty good. Yeah, you'll see loose gravel for the first maybe 1 to 2 weeks, and then it'll settle down, and you won't even know that it was tar and gravel. But we try to do our best to get at the loose gravel.
I was at a Greater Bassett meeting, the Greater Bassett Association meeting last week, and a constituent asked me about the road, can't think of the road in between the train station and the road on which Railroad Cafe is.
Mm-hmm.
That road, they said that it was just potholes are really getting torn up, or was when there was paving, some paving got left out. I didn't hear exactly what the constituent was saying, and I did have another one here at the earlier meeting today asking about that. I did ask the constituent to follow up and send me an email. I haven't received an email yet, but it is that road where where Railroad Cafe is, the road in between there and the train station. The train station at that intersection.
Yes, I'm familiar with the road,
Okay.
and I may be familiar with the issues. So
Okay,
if
good.
you could give me a call, or when you get some more details, and we
Okay.
can discuss.
All right, thank you.
Yes.
All right, are there other items? Thank you. Agenda item number 19, matters presented by the public. Do we have anyone wishing to address the board? I see one hand. Are there others? I have a brief policy statement to read prior to you coming. This is a time for public comment. We welcome your participation in tonight's meeting. We're here to listen to you. If you care to address the board, come to the podium, state your name, your subject matter, and the district in which you live. By coming to the podium, you have agreed that you will exhibit respect for the board, the staff, and its members. You will receive the same consideration from the board. Please try to keep your presentation to no more than 5 minutes. I saw one hand back here.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. My name's Darrell Emerson. I want to talk to you tonight for a few minutes about, I'll call it the state of the Collinsville Volunteer Fire Department. The comments that I'm about to make are mine alone. They may or may not necessarily represent other members of the fire department's comments. Instead, they are based on me being a member of that department for the past 47 years and the changes that I have seen and the fear of the direction that we're headed. Again, in no way should these comments be taken as the department. They are my comments alone and my feelings alone. First, I want to talk about cost. We all know that the cost of everything has gone ridiculous. It's gotten ridiculous. 1977, for example, a new fire truck cost somewhere around $150,000. This year, I'm writing specifications for a new pumper, and we anticipate the cost is going to be over $650,000. So, there's no way we could buy that truck, even think about getting that truck without the money from the county and the money from the Commonwealth and your continued support. Something this board, previous boards has done for many years is supporting the fire departments. I also was told that the newest pumper that we have, which is a 2010 custom pumper that we paid $365,000 for, when we replace that truck 14 to 16 years from now, we can expect the replacement cost of an identical truck to be $900,000 to $1 million. Again, we all know about the cost. I think today, y'all may have even bought a garbage truck for $400,000. So none of us like that, but it's the fact in the hand that we're all dealt with. Second thing I want to talk about, and to me is more important, is manpower, or lack of manpower. In the 70s, when I joined the department, we would average around 125 calls a year, calls people. Now, and we have for the past several years, we average well over 400 calls a year. So our call for service from our citizens of business has grown almost 4 times. The bad thing, the scary thing that I see is at our department with our active membership, which is like 25 people, we only have 4 people that are under the age of 30 years old. Our average age of our membership, our active membership, is 56.9 years. That was data that I gathered 2 months ago. Our response times, and this is to me the most critical part. Our response times when we're dispatched to an emergency is the slowest I have ever seen. I do not. If it was not for a mutual aid system, we would be hurting. Sometimes we have a fairly high percentage of calls, we don't even respond. An example, or we respond with minimal people. An example, we had an industrial fire at Mailer 6 weeks ago in the middle of the night. They had some production machinery that caught on fire. Obviously, the dispatch center, since it came in as a structure fire, it was automatic mutual aid. They turned out to us and the city of Martinsville. The city got there along with public safety, who we could not survive without those guys and girls. They got there way before we did. When I say we, I was driving a pumper, our assistant chief had the aerial ladder, and we were there. They had already started knocking the fire down by the time we got there. And this was an industrial fire in the middle of the night. So you can bang your head on the wall, why do people not respond? If y'all can come up with an answer, then it's, thank you if you can, because I can't figure it out. I don't get up and go to them like I used to. I'm 68 years old, I can't do that like I used to. When we do respond, this is another thing that I'm concerned about at Collinsville, is we're probably going to respond with minimal people, meaning 1 person on the truck maybe. In all likelihood, he is not wearing his protective clothing for whatever reason. And there's a possibility he may not be as trained as he should be to handle the emergency situation. My biggest fear with that is, and our members at Collinsville, they have heard me say this numerous times, is my biggest fear is one day we're going to arrive on scene with an untrained or not as trained as he or she should be. They're going to overcommit themselves in making decisions in those first critical few minutes, and someone's going to get hurt or worse. And shame on us if that happens. And we know that there's a problem with lack of manpower. One thing I would request each of you to do, and I think that the data is available monthly from Public Safety and Matt Tatum, is the call volume, the number of calls that go out. I think between Mr. Tatum and the 911 Center, they have the capability of also showing response times of how long it took from the time the initial call was toned out till an actual engine was en route. Not a response vehicle, but an engine that's carrying extrication equipment, you know, a pump, water hose, things to put out a fire or, you know, handle an emergency situation. You're going to see that, unfortunately, I feel like, and that Collinsville, we're at the bottom, we're at the very bottom as far as response times. It's nothing I'm not proud of. I'm certainly not proud to sit here and tell you that. I know Mr. Bryant and Dr. Cobbler, I've had the privilege of speaking with them a couple of months ago. They've heard a lot of this. If I had to give Collinsville, which at one time, I will sit here and tell you we were a top tier fire department in this county, without a doubt. We are the busiest as far as calls, are the second busiest every year. Again, Mr. Taylor can provide you that data that shows you that we're going to run more calls or have more calls or the second most calls year in and year out. But when you look at the call volume, you look at your demand for services, what the citizens and businesses' expectations are, the lack of help it's not a pretty picture. And I see it, and I personally am worried about it, not only as a member for 47 years in that department. I've held every position. I was chief for 13 or 14 years. I'm a trustee at that department now. But it's something I feel that the county, the citizens, we're going to have to make a decision sooner than later of what level of fire protection are we going to provide in Henry County and how we're going to pay for it. It's not a simple fix, it's not a simple answer, but I think we do, the leadership needs to decide what are we going to do and how we're going to do it. In closing, one of the most respected fire leaders in the country, he's passed now, he's Chief Alan Brunasini, Phoenix, Arizona. He wrote many articles on fire leadership, fire ground command, everything fire related. He lectured across the country. We was even lucky enough, a long time ago, he lectured here in Martinsville, Henry County. He gave a speech. Mr. Brunasini had a pretty simple statement, and it goes something like this. When Mrs. Smith, fictitious name, when she's having a bad moment and she calls 911 for help, her expectations are pretty darn simple. She expects a quick response with people that are well-trained and well-equipped. Nothing else. That's all her expectations are. Unfortunately, if I had to give us a grade, it would be a D on how we could help Mrs. Smith in her moment of need. Given the department I've been proud to be in, I'm still in it, that for 47 years, I'm going to say and tell you, I think we're failing Mrs. Smith. And I don't like it. And I hope you don't like it. Okay? Again, thank you for your time, and thank you for your continued support. Okay?
Thank you.
Are there others wishing to address the board under matters presented by the public? Anyone else? Seeing and hearing no indication as such, that takes us to agenda item 20. I'll accept a motion for adjournment.
So moved.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. All in favor? It is 6-0, Jennifer. Everyone have a good evening.
Let me tell you something.